All right, let's just get right into it. When we think about nuclear war, our minds usually go straight to the explosions, right? The big mushroom clouds. But the real story, the one that impacts every single person on this planet, is what happens after, in the days, the weeks, and the years that follow. We're going to break down the science of that aftermath. This quote, man, it really sets the stage, doesn't it? A nuclear war isn't just another event in history. It's a clean break, a dividing line for our entire species. There's the before, and then there's whatever comes after. The stakes just couldn't be any higher. The immediate destruction is a number so big it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around. We're talking hundreds of millions of people gone, just like that, wiped out by the blasts and the firestorms in a matter of hours. And as absolutely horrifying as that is, believe it or not, that's just the beginning.
So if the bombs and the fireballs aren't even the biggest threat to humanity, what is? Well, the answer is something called nuclear winter, and it is a chilling, world-changing consequence that doesn't start with radiation. It starts with fire. Let's see how that works.
Blasting out the sun sounds like something from a sci-fi movie, right? But the actual science behind it is terrifyingly simple. And it all comes down to one thing you see all the time: soot.
So here's how it goes down. The nuclear explosions, they don't just knock things over. They set everything ablaze, creating these enormous city-sized firestorms. The heat from these fires is so incredibly intense, it literally creates its own weather system, a super powerful updraft that works like a giant elevator, shooting smoke and soot way, way higher than any normal fire ever could.
And this is the elevator I'm talking about, a 𝗙𝗿𝗵𝗵𝗵 cloud. Try saying that 5 times fast. Just think of a giant, angry thunderhead, but instead of being made of water, it's made of smoke and fire. This isn't your average rain cloud, people. This is a monster forged by the fire itself, and it's strong enough to punch right through our atmosphere and into the layer above.
Okay, now this is the key difference right here. The soot from, say, a normal forest fire, it hangs out in the lower atmosphere, what's called the troposphere, and after a few days or weeks, rain washes it out. No big deal. But this firestorm soot gets blasted way up into the stratosphere, which is above the weather. And up there, there's no rain to clean it out, so it just stays there for years, blocking out the sun.
The scale we're talking about here is it's staggering. Climate models suggest a big nuclear war could shoot up to 150 million tons of soot into the stratosphere. I mean, how do you even picture that? Imagine a giant cube of pure black soot, the size of a skyscraper, just getting yeeted into the upper atmosphere, where it spreads out like a blanket and casts a shadow over the entire planet.
So, the sun is blocked. What happens next? Well, the consequences start to cascade, falling from the atmosphere right down to our dinner plates. The next phase of this apocalypse isn't about bombs anymore. It's about starvation.
Now, the good news, if you can call it that, is it's not a permanent new ice age. The bad news? The climate changes almost overnight. I'm talking weeks for global temperatures to just plummet. And the really critical thing here isn't how cold it gets, it's how fast it happens. Our planet's ecosystems, and especially our farms, they just can't adapt that quickly. It's impossible.
So what would this new climate even look like? Well, you can pretty much say goodbye to summer. It would just be canceled. And with less sunlight hitting the oceans, you get less evaporation, which means massive droughts. Growing seasons completely collapse. The world's most fertile farmlands, the breadbaskets of North America and Eurasia, they would likely stay frozen solid for years on end. And here's a terrifying little secret about our modern world. Our whole global food system is built just in time. That means we don't have huge stockpiles of food lying around. At any given moment, as a species, we are just a few weeks away from totally running out of food. In the worst-case scenario, this is what happens to our ability to grow food, a 90% drop in global calorie production. That isn't a famine. That isn't a food crisis. That is a complete and total collapse of our ability to feed ourselves, period. All right, so we've seen the science, we've seen the devastating impact on the food supply. Now, let's talk about the most terrible metric of all, the human cost. These numbers are, well, they speak for themselves. Even a so-called mild or regional nuclear war, say between India and Pakistan, could kill over 250 million people, most of them from starvation. If that war gets bigger, the death toll jumps to over 2 billion. And in a full-blown war between the US, NATO, and Russia, we could be looking at over 5 billion deaths.
I think this quote just perfectly captures how insane this all is.
This isn't some threat from outer space we can't control. This is a disaster entirely of our own making, but with the same planet-killing power as a giant asteroid impact. We'd be doing it to ourselves.
Just let's pause on that number for a second. 5 billion people. That's how many could die, not from the explosions, but from the starvation that comes during that long, dark, and very, very cold winter.
So, does anyone make it? Who actually survives this? And what kind of world do they get to inherit? It is an incredibly bleak picture, but some parts of the globe might, just might, do better than others. So think about it. Nearly all the nuclear weapons and likely targets are in the Northern Hemisphere. That means places way down south, countries like Australia, New Zealand, Argentina, they might be spared the worst of it. But survival would mean total, complete isolation. You can bet they would immediately halt all food exports to keep their own people from starving. They'd have to cut themselves off from the rest of the dying world.
For most of humanity, though, this is literally the end of the world as we know it. No power grids, no internet, no modern medicine. Survivors would be thrown into a new dark age, forced to live in a world defined by what and who they've lost.
And that really just leaves us with this one final, haunting question. If some small piece of humanity made it through, and over generations they managed to rebuild, would they learn? Or would the whole cycle of discovery and destruction just start all over again?
When it comes right down to it, after you look at all the science, all the models, and all the grim math, the conclusion is just inescapable. In the game of global thermonuclear war, there are no winners. There are just different levels of losing everything. The only winning move is making sure the game is never, ever played.